If you were looking for a particular classic Doctor story that does actually prove to be very relevant later on in the series run, then arguably the ultimate choice for that specific mindset is The Brain of Morbius, the fifth serial of Doctor Who's 13th season, first broadcast in 4 parts from the 3rd to the 24th of January 1976. It was written by Robin Bland, a pseudonym used by Terrance Dicks, and then the story was later edited by Robert Holmes. A pretty good teaming, and it does make for arguably a great story. So the TARDIS gets drawn off course and is brought to the planet Khan, with the Fourth Doctor, played by Tom Baker, and his companion, Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Sladen, trying to figure out what's going on and why they've been brought here. Well, the Doctor isn't really too keen to explore further than needed. Eventually, during a storm, they make their way to a laboratory owned by Dr. Mahendri Solon, played by Philip Maddock. He lives in that laboratory with his kind of Igor assistant, Kondo, played by Colin Fay, who's only really there to, as Solon has agreed when he's done with the experiments, to repair Kondo's arm, because Kondo was pulled from a spaceship crash. Apparently there have been several spaceship crashes on Khan, and Solon has agreed eventually to repair Kondo's arm. However, it turns out that Solon actually has much more dark prospects in mind, because he is serving a previous criminal Time Lord named Morbius. Morbius was a Time Lord who did some evil things, was killed, dispersed, and everyone believes he is dead. However, using body parts found from a variety of spaceship crashes, Solon plans to build a body for Morbius, inserts the surviving brain of Morbius that's talking to him into the suit, and ultimately allow Morbius to live again and cause a reign of terror. Now, he is kind of obstructed in his plan, not just by the Doctor and Sarah Jane, but also by the Sisterhood of Khan, a group of women on the planet of Khan who worship something known as the Sacred Flame. Now, the Sacred Flame, due to its composition and the minerals around it, it produces the elixir of life. And the Sisterhood have used that elixir for many years in order to basically achieve immortality. The Doctor does mention them with quite high regard, as the Sisterhood have also been known to share the elixir of life with the Time Lords in cases of severe need. But then, as the Doctor points out, the Sisterhood, they also have problems of their own, as he points out that the problem with immortality, that if you caused people to live forever, then there'd simply be no progress. Like if you look at any other kind of society around the universe, people live, people die, they make progress from there, and eventually, when the previous people have all gone, there are new people and progress has been made. But if the same people just keep living forever, then progress seemingly never gets made, as he points out. The Sisterhood are led by a woman named Maren, played by Cynthia Grenville, and there are a lot of members, including sisters played by Sue Bishop, Janie Kells, Gabrielle Mowbray, Veronica Ridge, there's a character named Chris, played by John Scott Martin, and there's also Maren's second-in-command, Ohika, played by Julie Brown. And the main reason that this particular story has become kind of relevant in more recent years is there's an ancestor of... Well, there's another character from Khan who appears later on called Ohila, and she's played by Claire Higgins, so it's slightly wondering, is Ohila a descendant of Ohika? But anyway, as I said, this story would actually become much more relevant later on, because while the story itself is good, Khan would also pop up again in 2013, as when they finally made a regeneration story for the 8th Doctor, played by Paul McGann. They had him return to the planet of Khan. Like, the ship crash lands there, and they end up giving him a version of the elixir to trigger his regeneration, of course, into the War Doctor. And Khan would also pop up again in the first episode of Series 9, The Magician's Apprentice, in 2015, and in the finale of Series 9, Hell-Bent. So this story, it would prove instrumental not only in the regeneration of Paul McGann's 8th Doctor, but also later on with Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. And also, the other big reason why this story has somewhat become relevant is with the Timeless Child reveal in 2021. 2020. Because during one part of the story, when Morbius has been put into his new body, he's now kind of got his brain in a kind of either plastic or glass jar on the top of a quite monstrous body. The Doctor challenges him to a battle of wits, or a battle of wills, between the two Time Lords to see who will come out on top to try and defeat Morbius. And when we see kind of what is inside their minds, we see the previous 3 regenerations that the Doctor had at that point. John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, and William Hartnell. But then we also see a couple more faces that we, the audience, don't recognise. And while at the time you could kind of just pass that off as maybe it's just a bit odd, now with the Timeless Child reveal, it kind of hints that the Doctor has had more lives than even he knew about. And it does put a lot more mystery behind the character. So, yeah, this story, The Brain of Morbius, has become a lot more relevant in the years since, with, as I said, the stories of The Night of the Doctor, The Magician's Apprentice, Hell-Bent, and The Timeless Children reveal. This story has gained a lot more relevance, or become a lot more integral to the Doctor Who canon. So watching it through, first time here, do I actually think it's good? Well, it's quite horrifying. I mean, there is a kind of Frankenstein-style-esque element to the story. And even when Kondo finds out that Solon had used his arm as the arm for Morbius, even you can understand his frustration and anger that you said you were going to repair me, and instead you used my arm for this creature. You do feel for him. There's also a slight point when Sarah Jane does get blinded throughout them, I think during part 2, and she can't see for the next 2 parts until eventually her sight's restored in part 4, and it gets a little complicated. That's the only part of the story I thought was maybe a little unnecessary, but we had to trust where they went with the story. Do I think The Brain of Morbius is good? Actually, yeah. I mean, as I said, it's got a quite good horror aspect to it, and they did manage to make a legitimate classic that does still remain relevant, like something like 40 years after it was broadcast. So, yeah. The Brain of Morbius, I'd definitely give it a thumbs up, and I'd say check it out for a lot more insight into the Doctor Who canon. Anyway, until next time, see ya.